Celtics Beat is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Hey everyone, welcome to edition of Celtics Beat. Happy New Year. Hope everyone had a great holiday season as well. 2025 off to a banner start, obviously, for the Boston Celtics. Banner 18 was part of 2024. Hopefully banner 19 is a few months away here. Celtics starting off the new year just the same way they closed out the old one. Wins. December 31st, took care of business in very lopsided fashion, beat the Toronto Raptors by 90 points. And then the first couple games of the new year, we've seen a bit of a sweaty one against the Minnesota Timberwolves, one that left their superstar, Anthony Edwards, crying in the locker room after the game and whining, and we can get to all of that. And of course, the back-to-back, again, we see Joe Mazzulla coaching circles around Ime Udoka, the former Celtics coach. 109-86 in Houston. That's 3 straight wins for the Celtics, who, just as when we were here last time a week ago, sit with the 3rd best record in the NBA, 2nd best in the Eastern Conference, and generally speaking, life is good. I am Adam Kaufman. Evan Valenti's here, and our guest of the day, guest of the show, Steve Bulpett. Again, Heavy.com senior NBA columnist there. Steve, Happy New Year. How are you?
I'm living the dream, actually.
I'm glad to hear it, obviously. How is the NBA coverage going for you right now? Because obviously, as we know, we've had you on the show for many years, and your roles have evolved, to where you were, very locked in, all things Celtics, but NBA columnist and eye around the league, and obviously all of your contacts around the league and all of that. And that's sort of morphed into, in recent years, more of a broader scope of the entire league, a little less of the day-to-day on Boston. Where do you stand here in early 2025 as it relates to how much coverage that, and your own personal time and interest, investment, and all of it into the defending champs, hopefully future champs, versus all the other contenders around the league?
Well, the I guess the larger focus is trying to find stories around the league, or finding them, just how to put them in the proper perspective. But the fact that the Celtics are such a big story around the league, makes our site want to lean toward them, lean toward coverage, because there's obviously huge interest in one of the, top 2 or 3 teams in the league. Which fits nicely because, I'm based here in the Boston area. So that makes things a little convenient. But there are so many things going on around the league, especially in the last week or so, that it's gotten pretty crazy. It's just a matter of putting it together and trying to crank out some stuff this coming week.
It's true. Usually a lot of that drama is sort of reserved for the NBA offseason, but it truly is just year round. And maybe, front of the line is everything going on in Miami right now with Jimmy Butler on the outs, and he's now suspended for conduct detrimental and wants out, obviously. And we've had Sean Grande on a number of times, and I don't remember exactly the phrase or the expression, but he's talked in the past about how, and this was usually in regard to like Kyrie Irving, how at a certain point in time, if you're always sort of pointing fingers and, at everybody around you, like maybe you're the bad roommate, you know what I mean? And so obviously this is now yet another stop where Jimmy Butler is kind of worn out his welcome. Obviously there's reports that a lot of the friction with Pat Riley goes back to when Riley told him to keep his mouth shut, so long ago, about, sort of the trash talking when he wasn't even available to play against the Celtics. And so he's going to be on the outs here. What do you think this does with respect to, I guess, I don't know where he's going to go, but presumably he's going to go to a good team. I think he'll go to a good team. So if that winds up happening, does this rock the landscape of the Eastern Conference at all, or was Miami a team that was a little bit off your radar?
No, I've always looked at Jimmy Butler as, he's had some good playoff runs, but there's times even in the playoffs where it's like you need to, lean closer to the floor to see him. He kind of, falls away from the picture a little bit. But as far as him going to a good team, it's hard to see, which good team, which team that is close to perhaps winning maybe a player or so away, can afford him, and not just his salary, but making his salary work vis-a-vis the cap and the apron and all the other fun things that that drive people crazy but are an essential part of how teams can maneuver. It's not just a case of let's get the best players we can and go to war. It's which players can fit in their salary structure that aren't going to not bankrupt the franchise. They're pretty much foolproof at this point, but not tick off the people that are signing the checks. So I think it's hard to see him, any good team or decent team really wants to move for him. You're looking at a 3 or more team deal, and those things are really hard to pull off with regard to the cap and apron, and with regard to teams, more teams now because of the play-in that are, in the mix. So there aren't teams that'll say, hey, look, let's pack it in. Let's help make this deal and see what we can get out of it down the line. So, yeah, I'm not sure how this works out, but it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, well, I'm just happy that this is a win for the Celtics, because wherever Jimmy Butler does end up going, unless it becomes more of a Jimmy Butler thing, and we'll see if he stays in the Eastern Conference, again, wherever that destination is. But a lot of the PTSD that Celtics fans have about the Miami Heat is very Butler centric. So not that I think Miami is this great team. There are other teams that I would worry about giving the Celtics problems in the Eastern Conference playoffs before Miami, but that's one less that we can knock away here.
Yeah, and you don't have to revisit the skeletons in the closet, depending if Miami were to make the playoffs, and you have to go through you got to take them seriously because they have Eric Spoelstra and all these other guys on the team. That would probably, depending on the return, go away. What I think is interesting, I was going to throw this to Steve, is the NBA has done a really nice job of, and this is, I'd say, to the credit of the NBA and the credit of just the fan. It's not like it has a multi-tiered thing where the trade deadline and the offseason are like two of the most fun things about the NBA. The transactional, the movement part of the NBA, I think, has brought a lot of eyes and attention to either stories you're writing or videos that we post on our YouTube page, or just clicks on Twitter or X or Blue Sky or wherever the hell we're posting now. Just brings a lot of attention to the sport in general. So what I find interesting is it seems like this CBA has sort of not neutered, but slowed down the idea of player movement and player transactions in the league. Because as you stated, like, this trading Jimmy Butler is not like hey, let's just hop on the trade machine and we'll just make this work. No, the caps and the aprons make this much harder to pull off. And so I phrase it this way, Steve, do you think the NBA knew at the time as they ratified this new CBA that they would hinder a big part of what makes this sport so popular in the public opinion?
I think in any situation, anytime you make a change, there are pretty much always unintended consequences. But I think it's been a goal of the league, as much as the transactions and the possibility of transactions, as much as the exact deals themselves, are great drivers of interest. I think the league has always tried to lean toward keeping some teams together. I remember 1 billion years ago, and it was so long ago that it was an all-star game in San Antonio. So we can look up what year that was. But I know that Ainge was doing TV at the time, and it was a few hours before an all-star game at the Alamo Dome. And we were on the court and there was hardly anybody. There was people in the building, but not all, the crowd hadn't come in yet. The players hadn't really taken the court at all. And this is well before, and the place is still semi-dark, and I'm giving you more detail than you really want. But we were talking to Stern, and I said, and this is, again, 1 billion years ago, I said, just, hasn't the cap kind of outlived its usefulness? Because there are so many teams that so many towns that wake up on the opening day of the season and realize they have no chance, and shouldn't they be able to make moves more freely? And his response, I think, was pretty telling as to what certainly then, and I think to a degree it's carried over, what the NBA's overall view of it was. His response was, who did Dave Winfield play for? And his point being that here was a star that had bounced around so much that, which team did you identify him with? In retrospect now, you probably look at it, and say, yeah, the Yankees and, the Padres but Minnesota and all these different situations. So I think he liked the idea of having the stars remain in where they are and develop some consistency so that fans could kind of lock in. But, as it's gone on, I think it's become a little, the owners, whenever CBA comes up, they want things to be as foolproof as possible, as them proof as possible. Because what's hilarious is, and we haven't had a lockout in a while, but, sitting around, and the last one was 2011, we were, sitting around covering the lockout, and we just laughed because here are the owners in there trying to make the best deal possible for themselves to protect themselves against themselves. And they know that as soon as everyone knows that as soon as the ink is dry on the new CBA, they're out trying to find ways around it. What's the loophole? How can I get around this deal that I just, negotiated? So, it's, excuse me. I think it's a little more difficult to make moves, but I think you're going to see a lot more teams saying, guy doesn't want to be here. We'll let him play it out and leave. The Paul George situation, instead of let's get something for him, let's just, the space, the cap space, and the maneuverability that comes with losing a big salary is almost more valuable than trying to get an asset for that player, because it's hard to get proper value, proper replacement value for that player.
All right, let's take a quick break. Today's show is powered by Prize Picks. Prize Picks, it's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members. Think about that. 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Again, more or less on at least 2 players, a chance to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game, Ev, all season long on Prize Picks.
Yeah, Prize Picks is the best, and so many things make it great. I've been talking about flex play forever, but it's because nobody's doing it, right? Like, nobody's offering this chance to get paid out, even if you don't hit every single one of your plays, right? You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Nobody's doing that. And we have the last week of the NFL regular season coming up, and this list has floated around. And with the list floating around of incentives, we're going to use that in our favor, Kaufman. We're going to go Kyler Murray more than 39.5 rushing yards. Kyler Murray more than half a rushing or receiving touchdown. Mike Evans more than 79.5 receiving yards, and Mike Evans more than 6.5 catches. That's a 10x payout. $20 wins you $200. Let's win some money on the backs of guys getting some money themselves out there in Week 18.
Yeah, they need it, right? This is important for everybody involved. So, and as we've been talking about, I mean, get your money truly couldn't be any easier. In as little as 15 minutes, watch that money roll into your account. Heck, Prize Picks even uses Venmo. It's literally that easy. There's nothing easier than that. So, download the app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download that app today. Again, that is code CLNS. Get $50 instantly after playing your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Let's get back to the show. Well, obviously a guy that Celtics fans are hoping will be a career Celtic, and he's got a long, long ways to go, but he's under contract for a while. And there are multiple guys that would fit this distinction, but Jayson Tatum being the head of that snake, obviously, is, once again, just having a tremendous year. He's probably more realistically in the most valuable player conversation than he's ever been before, at least in my
excuse me.
in years past. I've never really taken it seriously. We've talked about that in this show, so we don't need to rehash that. But this is a time where, it's entirely justifiable that Tatum be in that mix. And we're not even halfway through the year, so who knows how all of that evolves. But just with all the little things that he does and the way that he has broadened his game, Evan loves to talk about point Tatum, and I'm sure he'll have some thoughts on that. Just the way that Tatum is playing right now and leading this team, it's been ton of fun to watch. And, Jaylen Brown has missed a couple of recent games. The Celtics even still really haven't missed a beat. These two to begin the new year. Tatum is, the shot volume's obviously there. I mean, he's taken 19 and 27 shots respectively in these two games. And, all told, only shot about 44%. Launching threes like you read about, 27 between the two games. But hitting them at a 37% clip, not getting to the line nearly as much as maybe you'd like him to, but even still just turning it on when he has to. Is, with what you've seen from Tatum, and again, just the continued growth, because he is obviously, pardon me, such a young guy. He's only 26. He'll turn 27 in March, but, he's really, we say this all the time, like NBA age-wise, he's only just entering his prime years to, it's that 26, 27 to 30, 31 range where guys are generally at their absolute best. What ascension and growth and maturity and all of it have you seen from Tatum here in this season?
Well, I think it goes back to last season, really. I don't think it's changed much since last season. What his basic point of growth has been. The Celtics won the championship last year for a couple of reasons. Getting Kristaps Porzingis was huge. Getting Drew Holiday, replacing Marcus Smart with Drew Holiday. I mean, before that move, I think the Celtics had some serious questions. Losing Marcus Smart and what would that do defensively? Then all of a sudden you got Drew Holiday. It's like, okay, this is serious. So that maneuvering was important. But the reason the Celtics won the championship last year and why they didn't win it 2 years prior was the growth in Jayson Tatum's game. Against the Golden State Warriors a couple of years prior, they had, the Warriors had just basically kind of goaded him into, take the ball and go do something. And you saw the dribble, and try to force a play. What you saw last year, especially during the playoffs, and the things we're talking about, the things I'm going to talk about with the growth in his game, are things that don't necessarily make for MVP sparkle. Because I think the MVP thing is, that can be so much BS because there's an object to the game. And does your guy, what does he do to get your team to that object? So the difference you saw last year, again, especially in the playoffs, was Jayson Tatum seeing the double team coming, the extra defense, not necessarily double, but just extra shading, etc. Seeing it and making the right play to counteract it. And, one of the fallacies of assist totals is, he makes the important play that the pass that maybe leads to the pass that leads to the assist. But it was really Jayson Tatum's thought process and the move he made with the ball that created the bucket. That made the Celtics. And the Celtics moved the basketball. And you've seen it at times this year where they've had just like ugly looking games. And it's like, well, you're not passing and cutting. You get too many guys saying, I'm going to go make a play now. And we've talked about before, I know I've written about it, is that perhaps the most dangerous thing about iso ball is that sometimes it works, and can lure you into thinking that's a good idea. It's not. You need to make plays sometimes. It's important, sure. But the Celtics, when they move and cut and pass the ball and get everyone involved and space the floor, they are pretty much unguardable. So that part of Tatum's game, that it probably cost him, I'm sure it cost him the finals MVP, which should have, by all rights, been a split. It should have, I know this thing, there was 9 voters. It should have been 4-4 with someone voting for, I don't know, Luke Cornett, just so you could have Jaylen Brown and Jayson Tatum share that MVP, because that really was justifiably the way it should have worked out. But he cost himself that award because he moved the basketball, and it didn't always wind up in a stat that someone could hold up. That's what made the Celtics, because teams are going to load up to Jayson Tatum because they know he likes to, excuse me again, they know he likes to take the ball, pound it, and go make a play because he's good enough to do that. But him giving it up last year and getting in a better position to be more of a finisher at times, but to allow other people to score, which totally screws up a defense. Because now instead of just loading up to him and a couple of key players, you've got to worry about everyone, and that's what won him a title.
Yeah, what's funny is we're coming off these 2 games, the West Coast, Minnesota and Houston, and you're coming off what was an extremely impressive performance by Tatum in that Minnesota game, where I talked about this on Brian Barrett's podcast, Off the Pike, after the game was done. And you go look at that third quarter where, Minnesota ratcheted up their defense a little bit. They picked up Tatum a little bit earlier than they were in the first half. McDaniels did a spectacular job, in my opinion, trying to get him uncomfortable. And Tatum saw that and was like, all right, well, we'll just get Jaden McDaniels off me. Where is Julius Randle? He's over there. Where's the big guy Gobert? He's over there. Well, let's just switch this out. And now I am playing at the advantage, right? And whether they were sending doubles at him later in the game, he just knew how to think the game. And as you said, Steve, it wasn't the pass that led to the shot. It was a pass that led to the pass that led to the wide open whatever. And then post game, to get the comments we got from Anthony Edwards in terms of, they're doubling me and that's not my game. I just, I want to shoot. I don't want to pass the whole time.
He flat out said he just wasn't engaged.
Right.
In a 3-point loss.
I'm not sure how much they really doubled him. It was just the defense switching and guys showing to him, anyway. Yeah.
But that's the difference. Like in the maturity of Tatum, of what he was to, and I'm not saying Tatum was ever going to say anything like that, because he just never would. That's not his personality. But I can understand how a 23-year-old is like, yeah, I'm the next new big thing. I'm Anthony Edwards. They're comparing me to Michael Jordan. Like, I'm just going to be this guy. To what Tatum did in the finals and what he did, that night. What was that, Thursday night against Minnesota? It's just, instead of chasing stats, it's giving the game what it needs. And oftentimes we talk about Nikola Jokic in terms of, and now this year is a little different. He has to score more because that's the burden he has to bear on this team. But Nikola Jokic, the thing that makes Jokic so great is he always gives the game what it needs. That's why he's so terrifying, because he can kill you by passing the ball just as much as he can by shooting the ball. So when you look at where Tatum is now, and you look at some of the guys below him, it's like he should be propped up as an example of, like, look, you got to swallow your pride a little bit. You got to swallow your ego a little bit, and you have to learn how to trust your teammates, because once that happens, you can truly embark on the next step of NBA greatness, of becoming an all-time champion. I mean, we all have followed the Celtics roughly for a cajillion years here. That's the secret sauce to Celtics basketball. It's not individual accomplishments, it's team accomplishments. And as you look at Tatum now, I think, other than probably Nikola Jokic, I don't think there are too many other guys, Steve, that embody winning basketball more than this guy. And to your credit, like, how do we not factor this in more to the MVP equation? It's just not sexy enough for everybody.
Well, with regard to MVP voting and awards voting, I stopped voting on that stuff a billion years ago.
No, and to your credit, that's great. You should definitely, that's for these all NBA awards where money is tied to these things. Like, exactly.
I just think that's I don't think it's ethical. And I'm one of the vice presidents of the Writers Association, PBWA, and I still, I bring it up from time to time, but guys and women like their votes, and like being a part of that process. But I just don't think it's right. And I think, like you're talking about, judging MVP, it's hard. And I'm sure we've talked about it on this podcast, that what I always point to is that, there wasn't a day, and I'll repeat it, there wasn't a day in Bill Russell's life that Wilt Chamberlain wasn't a better basketball decathlete, could do more things better in an individual skills competition situation. But Bill Russell understood the game in a way that Wilt never, and I love Wilt. He was a great guy to talk to and fun and all that. Sometime I'll tell you about his answering machine on his phone. But Bill understood the game in a way that Wilt never fully grasped. So you have Wilt, who winds up being a colossus, and you've got Bill Russell, who winds up being merely the greatest winner in the history of team sports. What are you here for? A more, bringing it into this century, or the end of last and this century, Tim Duncan. How great was Tim Duncan? No one talks about Tim Duncan when they're mentioning the greatest players, and they're mentioning this guy with the flash and this, Tim Duncan. It's not just a matter with Tatum, and this is something that he's still growing with. It's not just a matter of being willing to make the pass, which is step one, but it's all of a sudden gaining the knowledge, like an NFL quarterback. They become good because of how fast, the faster they can recognize what the defense is and what's available in that defense. So it's not just the willingness to pass, it's the ability to recognize what the right pass is. And Tim Duncan, that was him. And that's why, no one talks about the Spurs so much because they weren't sexy. Although, Manu Ginobili remains one of my favorite NBA players of all time. I remember I'm walking down the hallway in Boston after a game and was talking with Greg Popovich, and and I just turned to him. I said, I got to admit, Manu's my NBA man crush. And he turned to me and said, he's mine too. That's winning plays, when you need them, the right play, and not just like a something that winds up on the stat sheet, but a deflection, knowing how to play a passing lane, all those things that are what I really love about basketball, that it's such a social game. There are so many things that go into it. Relationships, on-court relationships, understanding its geometry, it's understanding spatial relation. It's, how you deal with your teammate when he misses 3 shots in a row. That kind of social interaction. Do you say the thing or give the pat that lets them know it's okay and you get to, the next play is better? All those things I think are huge in basketball. And it's why, I love a lot of sports, but basketball, I think, combines so many things that are, that are life real that, I know we've gotten kind of far away from what the hell we were talking about at the start of this, but those kind of things are what make players great and what make teams win.
Well, believe it or not, Steve, you took me exactly where I wanted to go, because it's like you're reading my mind, because Tim Duncan was actually going to be the next person that I brought up with respect to Jayson Tatum, because there was, and Duncan's a top 15 player all time. Am I even shorting him when I say that? Top 10.
But who mentions him there?
Yeah, he's incredible. There was a tweet a couple days ago that went viral by this guy. I don't know who it is, but the handle is Tev Rebranded. And the tweet was, Jayson Tatum might have the same problem Tim Duncan had. Like, this is clearly one of the best basketball players we've ever seen, but he isn't very exciting or interesting, so people tend to overlook his greatness. Goes on to say, plays the game the right way, makes the extra pass, defers to his teammates at times, isn't a human highlight reel. It's not what the average NBA fan gravitates to. A lot of the stuff that obviously we've been saying already here. And I'm not saying Jayson Tatum is Tim Duncan. Again, we're talking about arguably a top 10 player ever compared to a guy that would love to one day be in that conversation, but has, a long way to go, obviously. But with respect to MVP conversation or just general day-to-day acknowledging a certain player's greatness because he isn't, like Anthony Edwards, John Morant kind of flashy. Do you feel like there's like Tatum and Duncan specifically have kind of a comparison there that's valid to make?
Duncan was known as the big fundamental.
Yeah.
And I think his game was a lot drier than Jayson Tatum's. I think what subtracts points from Tatum, and in the eyes of his own fans, I mean, if you're at the Garden, you hear it. He'll force up a shot here and there, and the Garden will, there'll be a collective groan. So I think there are significant differences in their games. But Tatum is what? He's still like only 19, right? Isn't that the case?
Yeah.
He's going to grow more, I believe, and I remember, it's been said a billion times. Paul Pierce talking about to me about when a player comes in the league, they want to establish themselves. They want to show they belong. Then they want to show they're a star and all those different things. And Pierce had admitted that if they'd have put the Pierce, Garnett, Ray Allen group together several years before, they might not win. But they were at a stage in their career where it was like, it's time to do this. These are our goal. This is our primary goal now as individuals, is to win. Excuse me. My goal is to stop coughing.
Going around, man. Don't you worry about it. We're going to take one more break. Tell you today's show is powered by Game Time. There is nothing better than going to a live game, right? I mean, think about it. It's fun watching on TV. It's fun talking about it. But to be there in person, in that park, in that stadium, in that around that rink, whatever it may be, you got to be in the building. So many core memories that I have as a kid, or even as an adult taking my kids, revolve around going to some sort of sporting event. I mean, Evan here, he's going to the Celtics, or the last Patriots game of the season. My kids have been on me all week saying, we didn't go to a Patriots game this year. You know what? We didn't. And I failed, because I should have spent some time on Game Time, because going to a game now is even easier than ever before, Ev. Game Time, there's a new feature called Game Time Picks. Makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff, shows you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets.
Yeah, and now we talk about filtering through thousands of tickets. Game Time, when you open the app and let's say you want to go to the Patriots game on Sunday, or you want to go to a game of the future. When you pull that game up, all right, and you look at the tickets and what tickets are available, they're going to have labels next to some of these particular deals, quote unquote. You're going to have a great deal. You'll see amazing deal, but right up front, you're going to see tickets labeled super deal, which means the tickets you're looking at that particular moment on the top 1% of prices based on the value for that game. And it's literally right in your face. You cannot miss it when you're scrolling through tickets. You get all-in pricing with Game Time, which shows you everything you need to pay up front. There's no hidden fees when you go to checkout.
Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. It's really that simple. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Let's get back to the show. While we're on the Spurs, Evan and I were talking about this earlier. There was a tweet earlier today, or maybe it was yesterday. I think it was yesterday, actually, from this guy. Airless Jordan is the handle, just to give credit. So this was going into last night, where Wemby was a beast. Victor Wembanyama was incredible last night. The tweet is, Victor Wembanyama was playing in his 100th game tonight. In his first 100 career games, he has more points than LeBron, Durant, Carmelo. rebounds, then AD, Ewing, Embiid, blocks, then Shaq, Mutombo, Olajuwon, then Curry, Clay, Trae Young. Wemby is 21 years old. Matter of fact, today is his 21st birthday. Happy birthday, Victor Wembanyama. You can drink now. Are we truly looking at a one of one? I mean, if this guy can manage to stay healthy and avoid so many of the things that, impact guys of his size, stature, build, in the years to come, is this, we call like Jokic and guys, the unicorn and that type of thing. But is Wemby, does it feel day to day like we're watching something that we have truly never seen before and may never see again?
Yeah. Yeah, my answer is yes. Okay, what's the next question? The thing about him is if you focus just on Wembanyama's skill set, that can be enough right there. But I think I mentioned this on I'll still call it Twitter last week, or something like around a week and a half ago, that like I've always been impressed from the first time I spoke with him and saw him speak in a group, even at Summer League his rookie year when he just had come over. The thing that impresses you first is his maturity, his grasp of things, and then that carried on. He was in Boston last year. We were talking to him after the game, and he talked about the Celtics, and he just said, "Hey, it's how they play with each other and move the ball and all these different things." He goes, "That's what makes this team great." And I wish I had thought about this and had the quote available to us, but it was just like, wow, this guy is not only a great physical talent, but he's obviously working to make himself better every freaking day. But he also, quote unquote, gets it. Mm-hmm. And the latest thing, which going back to what I started to say about tweeting a week and a half ago, was the thing that struck me after they lost to the Knicks, excuse me, on Christmas Day, was that the game is over and tight game, and a bunch of his teammates, they're greeting the other Knicks and they're smiling and, hey, good to see you and stuff like this. And the camera focused on Wembanyama, and it's like he was pissed. They had lost a basketball game, and he didn't like that. And I think the way I ended it was, talent plus competitiveness equals greatness. And like that just struck me. Like, yeah, he lost a game, and it's one of 82, and it was in New York, and they put up a good fight against a team that, in the on the NBA food chain right now would appear to be better than them, and they fought them to the end on the Knicks' home floor and all this stuff, and it was a good look in a lot of ways for the Spurs. But he was pissed. So and then was it the next day he says he tweets out like, any good places to play chess here? And he goes to Washington Square Park and is playing chess with people. He's like, still 21 and, get off my lawn age. And I wish I had his maturity. I wish I had his life outlook.
Yeah, he's an impressive guy. And what's interesting to me is, we NBA ratings have been just like this hot button issue that we just keep hammering home about how the product's unwatchable or there's no American stars or whatever. I think Wemby might be, Kaufman, like the first one of these international guys that transcends popularity to the American side. I mean, it's first off that playing chess in Washington Square Park on what was a really awful rainy day with random fans is a great way to win the hearts and minds of people, Americans, at least in New York City. Like to this point, like my dad is now kind of obsessed with Wemby. Like my dad is not a huge NBA guy. He's interested in the Celtics because I do a podcast and he's always asking me about this, but we had that game on. We had the Knicks Spurs game on Christmas Day. And I told him, I said before the game, I was like, Dad, you're going to see this guy. His name's Victor Wembanyama. He's this French kid. He's 20 years old, and you're going to be blown away by how good he is. And he's like, well, how will I know it's him? I'm like, oh, you're going to know. He's going to be unmissable. And he comes out and
the guy that can guard the Chrysler building. That'd be him.
basically, right?
The logo.
And he comes out, he's got 24 in the first half. And my dad at the end of the half looks at me and goes, can anybody guard this kid? And I said, no. Nope. And then I showed him a clip of the other night where Chris Paul and out of bounds play, just because Wemby's got great position underneath the basket. He's just sitting right there. And Chris Paul just goes, boop. Wemby's right there, just taps it in, run back the other way. I think this might be the first guy of this bunch, the Sheas, the Lukas, the Jokic's. Wemby might be the guy that breaks the mold and brings the international basketball scene kind of to the front of American popularity. Like, people are going to root for this guy. And Kaufman, I don't know about you, maybe with your kids, if this is a thing yet, but with my dad, who again is a very casual NBA fan in the regular season, watches more in the playoffs because it's more intense, but he is locked in on Wemby. And the last guy he was locked in on was Steph Curry. And, again, that's the most popular guy, I think, since like Jordan. Wemby, I think, Kaufman, is it with that way with your kids and how popular?
I mean, I'll answer your question this way. My 10-year-old and both my 10 and 12-year-olds are obsessed with the NBA, but my 10-year-old is kind of on a jersey kick right now. And he has 3 non-Celtics jerseys, one of which is Steph Curry, the other one is Luka, and the other one is Wemby.
That makes all the sense in the world.
As Meatloaf once said, 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
That's right.
It's unbelievable.
But here's the thing, among the different words you could use to describe Victor Wembanyama, if you picked like the top 5 words to describe him, in anyone's list of 5, the word authentic has to be there. Because he's not doing this stuff to like, hey, look at me. It's like, we're staying over in New York before we fly out. Do I want to lock myself in the hotel room? What do I want to do? I want to experience New York a little bit. I picture him at the playing chess there, and I was, oh God, I'm blanking on the actor's name, but the movie Finding Bobby Fischer. Damn, who's the actor? Like, there it is. This guy's playing chess in the park.
I'm trying to remember too. Now I want to look it up.
Lawrence Fishburne? Was it
Lawrence? I mean, he was in the movie. I haven't seen it forever.
That's him. Yeah, like that. So anyway, it's a great movie, by the way. See it. For all you
100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Perfect.
Perfect. Yeah.
Perfect. Just for the people that are curious.
But yeah, it's like it was when you watch, hundreds and hundreds of games, as you guys have, and certainly as I have over the years, you kind of look for like cool moments that stand out. People talk about, what was the best game you covered? What was the best? And some stuff runs together, to be honest, because it's so much basketball. Little moments stick out. Like the Celtics played a game the other night in Minnesota that was, by any account, I mean, there were 15 plays in there that were like, wow, that's a big play. The moment that sticks for me is a couple of I'm not sure how many minutes or seconds after Derek White hit that fall away 3 off the glass, like the horseshoe shot, like there was a break in the action. He's over by the sideline, and there's this young kid in a Timberwolves jersey, and this young angelic child smiles, looks up at Derek White and says, "Did you mean that?" I mean, it's like, like Peter down. It's like, this is cool. I know that, I should be talking about, well, they set a hard pick and all this stuff here. When you're seeing so much basketball, little things like that to weirdos like me stand out.
Goff, I thought he was going to go with the chess scene from Independence Day with Judd Hirsch sitting there in like the park playing chess. With Bobby Fischer, a little bit more of like a chess movie, but more up my alley, more up your alley. I thought with Independence Day, I thought about Judd Hirsch sitting there in the park playing chess, and then Jeff Goldblum comes by and beats him.
Yeah. When the kid was it Josh Waitzkin? He was a real person. The movie was it Searching for Bobby Fischer? Was that?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. When he's in the competition and the parents are afraid that he's not, ruthless enough and all that stuff here, and he makes the move, and the family and Lawrence Fishburne are in another room watching it on video because they're not allowed in the big room. And when he finally figures out the move to make, and it's like, find it. And he makes the move, and Lawrence Fishburne points the thing, goes, there it is. And it's like, yeah, ooh, that's it's like that scene is like the one in Remember the Titans where Bertier goes over the opposing coach and like points at him, stuff this up your tush, you racist bastard. I think that was dialogue that I added, but it was pretty clear.
The intent was there.
You can read the thought bubble. I read the thought bubble over the linebacker's head.
It was in the stage directions.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
It was in the notes. All right, let's we don't have a lot of time left. Let's take it back to the Celtics a little bit, because we have it's been interesting. But yes, we have veered off course a little bit from being Boston centric. That's okay. We do that every once in a while. It's a gauntlet of a January for this team. Now, it started off great, obviously, with these back-to-back wins on back-to-back days. And while shorthanded at Minnesota and Houston, no Jaylen Brown. We've seen Al Horford, he's not playing the back-to-backs. They're not 100% healthy, and they're still going out and performing at the clip that they are. But it does not get any easier. The road specifically, they have two games: Sunday at Oklahoma City, it's an afternoon game, and then Tuesday at Denver. So you have, I like the, absent like Golden State being part of this, who the Celtics are going to visit in a couple of weeks. I like the dichotomy here of, sort of the perceived next champ in the NBA from the Western Conference anyway, and the last one, in OKC and Denver, and a team that you still, this Nuggets team that you don't count out by any means, so long as Jokic continues to do the Jokic things that he does. But these two games, as part of this, like every other stretch that Boston is more or less in throughout this month, they'll get a little gap after the road trip, a Tuesday to Friday. But what do you need to see, if anything? I mean, it's easy to look at it and just say every game is one of 82. None means more than another, all of that. But you know how this works. Like, at the very least, fans, if not to a man, players and coaches in that locker room, look at games like OKC and Denver and others as litmus tests and measuring stick games and all of that stuff. Is there something that you feel like, as a consumer, that you need to see from the Celtics in these games that make you feel any sort of way, or is there just nothing to prove when you're the defending champs?
I think if you see, like in the game against OKC, if you see defensive focus, if they're, and that's kind of gone away from them at times, and certainly their offensive focus has. But if you see that, basic locked in idea, they can still lose that game, and it won't, it won't be a wound that leaves a real mark. There is just so much that it's so hard. You never really know. When I've spoken to groups and stuff, and businessmen, they always want to talk about the gambling and the betting and things like that. Mm-hmm. Celtics go into Houston. Now, Celtics didn't have Jaylen Brown. Houston didn't have a few guys, but still, Celtics playing on the second night of a back-to-back after a difficult game, a late flight, a longer than people realize flight from Minneapolis to Houston. Was there any thought in your mind that the Celtics would do what they did to Houston in that game? I mean, if you had money to bet, you would have had to say, if you were just betting a strict money line win-loss, you'd have to say, if my life depends on it, I got to bet Houston, right? Fair?
I mean, this, for one, to your point, it was a virtual pick'em, especially after the injury news. Like, the Celtics were, 3.5 point favorites, 3 point favorites, something like that. So, they were favored, but narrowly. to your point, I mean, I think a lot of people would have, and I don't know what the betting splits look like. I could look it up, but I think a lot of people would have been on the Houston for sure.
But you certainly didn't, expect that kind of a situation. No. And so it's
wouldn't have wagered on a blowout, alt spreading the thing up to 20 points or whatever.
Going into OKC, it's like, there can be like a fulcrum point where the game can kind of spin off into, ridiculousness, or it could stay tight, So again, if they just come out with focus and don't if they show that they're serious here, maybe that's not the right word, but see, if I were writing, I'd be able to zip back and erase that and type on. So yeah, if they just come out and play the way that with that kind of an intent, then you can live with the results. And it won't make a whole lot of difference if they meet again. Certain matchups can, be. I look more at that. How will teams deal with certain matchups, and what effect that could have. So the Celtics, when they would play the Heat, and getting back to the whole Jimmy Butler thing, yeah, he would do things, but it was like the matchups that got created there that made it so difficult. Not necessarily that Jimmy Butler was that quote unquote freaking good, but that's, what you would look at more. The Celtics in the second half last night totally counteracted the Şengün minutes with the way they changed their defense. Brilliant, and the Rockets never recovered. So yeah, if the Celtics come out and just play with their game and don't lose the focus, then you can take with whatever happens. You can live with whatever happens. You should be able to anyway.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to these just because it's not too often that Boston plays an opponent where they can actually learn something about themselves against said opponent. I love when Boston plays Denver because it's a chess match and you get to learn a little bit about how these Celtics will react to certain situations. I think Oklahoma City is going to provide an excellent chess match for these guys, especially on their offensive end, Oklahoma City's defensive end, because Oklahoma City, I mean, you go back to that NBA Cup game, and I know they lost to the Bucks. I understand that, but if a certain couple of things go a little differently, Oklahoma City would have come back down 20 and won that game because of how good their perimeter defense was. If you're Milwaukee and you're sitting there thinking, "Hey, we won this game," so out of the net, no. What I would be concerned about is if when Dame's on the floor, Oklahoma City can completely shut the water off of your offense with how good on the perimeter they are. That's scary stuff. So when you look at Boston, you look at they're a great offense. You had the Houston Rockets on Friday night. That's a great defense, and Boston did pretty well against them. I'm looking for sort of that. Like, this is a one of the best, if not the best, defensive team in all of basketball right now, Oklahoma City, especially on the perimeter where Boston's strong. I mean, they have Derek White and Drew Holiday and Jaylen Brown and Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser and Jayson Tatum. Like, that's where the bread and butter is. And if they're going to have a tough time getting into sets against the Oklahoma City team, well, then you got to come up with some wrinkles later on in the season to counteract some things. So as you sit here, these are the games I get really juiced up for because you get to learn something. And Mark Daigneault's going to come out. He's going to have a plan. He's going to have a way to make you uncomfortable. How does Boston respond to that? It'll be fascinating. And, you get bogged down in the season with the Charlottes and the Detroits and the, whatever have you. These are the real fun ones. And it's a shame that they only play Kaufman once, twice a year, and they're so spread out. And when you have series that are best of 7 and you only get to play these teams twice, it's like, man, what can you really take? But at the same time, like, I don't know, it's unfortunate, Koff, because you and I were talking pregame or pre-show that I will not be watching this game. So I'll be in Foxborough to watch Mitch Trubisky and Joe Milton duel it out in sub 20-degree temperatures. But this one is appointment television here. And this is like one of these days where if you're an NBA fan, whether like casual or not, you'll be locked in on this game. I think a lot of people last night, as an example, or Friday night were locked into that Oklahoma City, New York Knicks finish. Well, you saw the whole game or not, I don't know, but you probably saw the last 4 minutes of that game. Similarly, you probably saw the last 4 minutes of Denver and San Antonio. Did you watch the whole game? Maybe not. You got into at the end when it really mattered. This is a great test for Boston, and Kaufman, and as you look at what Boston can or cannot do, it's just going to be how their offense reacts to this great defense, because Boston hasn't seen a defense like this the entire season, buddy. And I don't know about where you're at, where your temperature's at, but I think this will not be as smooth as a lot of people think when the ball gets tipped on Sunday, for sure.
No, I think it's going to be a fun game for sure. And I'm going to be kind of more locked into football as well. It's just, time of the year and everything, week 18. But this is one of those, if we lived in a world where people could successfully block things out and avoid communication, turn off all notifications on their phones and just record that thing and watch it later with no knowledge of how it played out, it's obviously the kind of game to do so. But like you said, a couple regular season meetings. And I do think this is a finals preview. I do think we're going to see that best of 7 between Boston and Oklahoma City in a matter of months. And I'm rooting for it. I think that would be just so much fun. And I, independent of what I think about the Celtics, who, are at least have the makings anyway of a little mini dynasty here potentially. Obviously a lot needs to go right for that to happen. The Thunder have felt like they are the team that is ascending and they're next, and they're, just with all the incredible young talent on that team to begin with, coupled with all of the assets and picks, and somewhere making Ainge blush with what Presti's been doing out there, stockpiling for that team. So yeah, and couple that with, again, Chet and obviously all the other guys, but even just what they've been able to do recently through the draft. It's incredible. I think it will be a fun one for sure. And then, after they sweat through that thing, you got Jokic waiting for you. So it doesn't get any easier for sure. But that's why it'll be really interesting to sort of circle back in a few weeks, look back on January and see how the Celtics have survived it. But they've given themselves a nice cushion right now, sitting at 26-9, 4.5 behind the Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference, whereas the Oklahoma City Thunder sandwiched between them in terms of overall NBA record at 29-5. So a lot of great stuff. And Steve, we'll keep an eye out for posts over there on Heavy as well. You can make sure that you check out heavy.com. Easiest way, obviously, is just, you could Google Steve Bulpett and Heavy, and it'll, first thing that pops up will be his personal page, and you can see all of his articles. But if you want the direct link, you want to type it all in, heavy.com/author/Stephen Bulpett. That is Stephen PH. So make sure you check it out, obviously. Steve, we really appreciate you hopping on, first guest of 2025. And hopefully you feel better as well. All of us, we're that nagging cough that's going around, and, get comfortable in front of the TV tomorrow.
With regard to the football dilemma tomorrow, just remember the 3 most exciting letters in all of sports entertainment: DVR.
That's right.
And look, it's in kind of to your point, the big thing to watch for tomorrow with the Celtics is going to be adjustments. Like in my case, it took me a long time to adjust and realize that I have a mute button here. So when I cough, I prevented you from having to deal with that. So my bad. But, some of us are smarter than others. Some of us.
It's radio for you,
Dumber than others.
That's right. No.
Cough button, very important, Kaufman. You got to have that ready to go. You never know.
No, you're right. You're right. We don't. It's a podcast, but
I got it on. I got the mute button on my mic. You don't have a mute button on yours?
It's over there. I keep it real. Just cough for the people.
He has a Kaufman button. Every time he pushes it, some really strong take comes out.
There we go.
At Steve on Twitter at Steve B Hoop. Steve, always appreciate it. We'll bug you again real soon for sure.
Guys, be well, okay?
All right, you as well. For Steve, for Evan, I'm Adam. Rate, review, most importantly, subscribe to the Celtics Beat podcast, whether you listen to us wherever you download your podcasts, or of course, if you check it out, video version on YouTube over there on the CLNS Media YouTube page, among a bevy of Celtics themed podcasts. Make sure we are part of your rotation. We greatly appreciate you. And All-Star game and all of that stuff, mid-season, it's approaching. We got a lot of basketball in front of us here in the new year, and hopefully a nice new banner and rings and all of that for, the people that receive them anyway, in a matter of months to come. We'll talk to you next time on Celtics Beat.